Ripley, come on. What'd you do with the lights? I mean, what's going on? Who are you? Whoa, hold on there, buddy. Now, look here, bud. I don't know what it is you want, or who it is you think you're messing with, but, wait, what do you got there? No, I'm not watching that. No, never again. No. God, no. I'm not watching The Room. I'm not watching The Room. I'm not watching The Room. You're my favorite customer. You're tearing me apart, Lisa. I hope you enjoyed that little short that I made that was inspired stylistically by Dario Argento's Inferno. And Dario Argento's Inferno is a sort of sequel to Suspiria, and he had this idea for a trilogy where each film followed three witches, and they weren't necessarily sequels in the traditional sense where one took place after another. Think Cloverfield, where each movie is a particular theme, but it sort of keeps in style and doesn't have certain characters reappearing, but maybe has certain places or story elements or antagonists. So his idea was to have three films, and each film would follow one of these three mothers, these three witches that are basically witch gods. They're these demigods that are pure evil. I approached Inferno as I watched it as its own thing. So Inferno follows these three people who sort of discover this book called The Three Mothers, and their interest in this book draws upon this very strange and evil force that is after them and killing people around them. This movie is a dark, modern 1980s horror film. It feels very much like a fantasy in the way that it's filmed, in the way that it's directed, in the way that its story is brought out. And that is so unique. I absolutely love the way this movie is shot. It's going to take some suspension of disbelief because there's a lot of times where characters kind of go off and they find these really immaculate, beautiful, but torn down places that probably shouldn't exist in a big city. It seems a lot like a fantasy where, you know, the adventurers or the main characters sort of go out into the world and they find these really strange places with old artifacts, and Inferno definitely presents a lot of its sets that way. And I will say this, I don't like it more than Suspiria. It's hard not to compare the two because I mean it's directed by the same guy and they're sort of within the same series. And I think that Inferno is Dario Argento's imagination on fire. It is absolutely set up beautifully. Each shot is colored and set up almost like a painting. And there's not a whole lot of scenes where the lighting is traditional. It's typically lit in a lot of blues, reds, and some oranges. It has that, again, it has that fantasy element to it. And even when something terrible is happening on the screen, you can't look away because it's a piece of art. And that is Dario Argento's direction style in a nutshell. He seems out to prove that you can tell a story and have a movie and have it be an art piece, and you don't have and you could tell your story through colors and sets. To the film's detriment, sometimes the story doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In fact, a lot of times the story doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There are things that aren't explained. The antagonist motivation isn't really clear, and even the climax is the film's weakest part. For me at least, I think the climax is very anticlimactic, and which is a shame because the rest of the film has such great build-up. Like the scenes that are very suspenseful are extremely suspenseful. It's not like you get that payoff immediately. There's a good example is there's a scene with a guillotine and a character is being held there, and the guillotine comes down. It doesn't slice her head immediately. It's somebody stops it right before it hits her neck, and it slowly goes up and then comes back down, and bam. I think in today's horror movie they just get right to it. There wouldn't be that suspense build-up, and it wouldn't be done in a certain way or have that iconic music that Inferno has. And the score is almost on par with Goblin's score for Suspiria. There are times where it gets a little cheesy and a little intrusive, but during the more quiet scenes where characters are looking around and trying to figure out what's going on, it's very, very... It's a very, very transportive soundtrack, and it's absolutely beautiful. I can't wait to listen to it while I'm writing. Inferno isn't going to be for everyone. It's clear that the movie is written by somebody whose first language isn't English, that a lot of the dialogue comes off very like, I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling rather than show you. And the three characters, you're not going to necessarily remember their names by the end of it. And, I mean they're all fairly likable, but they don't have as much presence as the main character in Suspiria. But again, what Inferno has over Suspiria is the more elaborate set pieces, and that Dario Argento, it feels like he was able to do a little bit more. He wasn't just in one location for most of the film. There are multiple locations in Inferno, and again, it feels like a horror fantasy set in the modern 1980s. Dario Argento's Inferno. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Comment below, let me know. I hope you really enjoyed that short that I did. I had a lot of fun doing that. Thanks as always for watching. Make sure you check out my books on Amazon. They're available on paperback and ebook. You can check out my merchandise store. There's all sorts of cool shirts and mugs for you there. Thanks as always for watching. Bye.